Hi there gamers, welcome along to the Game and Respawn podcast. I am here, Rossco, with my good friend David. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
I'm alright, man. I'm alright. I'm recovering from our onslaught on the website this week. If out there in Gameland you don't know, we've had a very, very busy week with some articles, one in particular we'll move on to. But this is the Game and Respawn podcast, in which today our focus is firmly set on Final Fantasy 15, following David's discussion piece about whether or not it was so great when the demo was played at EGX this year. We're also going to talk a little bit about Mafia 3 that was released on Friday and just what our expectations are for that, given there are no reviews out at the moment. There were no advanced copies released, so that'll be interesting. And we're going to discuss a few bits on to this week's and the past week's news and what's coming up for you towards the end there. So let's kick it in with Final Fantasy 15. David, do you want to just tell the people out there in the world exactly what you were thinking at EGX and what you did with your piece that went a bit, shall we call it viral? Shall we say we went viral?
It did go, by our standards, viral, I think. Yeah, I don't want to get overly egotistical about it and say that we were doing, gangbusters. It was no IGN article, but it was certainly a surprise for an article that I had no intention of writing. Ever. Like, that was not something I was going to write, because when I went there and I played in the environment I played in, which again largely contributes to how I felt about it, I walked in and went, no. And I've been a champion of Final Fantasy 15 for a while. Episode Dusk Sky, when Ramu picked you up as a summon, when I got that summon, that video went on our website.
That was
no one cared that video went on the website though, Russ. That's where things come in. It's a bit like, oh, you didn't like the genuinely excited coverage, so all right. But I do understand. The article in question is regarding the fact that I was disappointed by the EGX demo, and that demo probably was better than I gave it credit for. I didn't get that deep into it, but I played it for a bit. It just didn't feel right to me, and some people have pointed out, with this level of fervor to them because they're so excited about something that they're heavily invested in. And I understand that. I think people get too invested in certain things. They look at the No Man's Sky controversy. I just want to go back to that for a second. Ooh. And we were all excited about No Man's Sky. I got sick of hearing about it at a certain point. But, we were confident that game was going to be really good. And that game was okay.
Yeah.
And if you recall, I was looking recently, actually, I had some old pictures on Twitter about when I was looking into how people reacted to Jason Schreier over at, I believe it's Kotaku, when he reported the delay of No Man's Sky. He got death threats. And so did Sean Murray of Hello Games. They got death threats for delaying and reporting the delay of this game. And then it came out and everyone was like, eh. And that was it. It's amazing the way that the internet sometimes reacts to things, and not the entirety of the internet, but a very small vocal group of people get really latched on. But this situation came to a head where this article went up, and I expected it to do nothing. You put it on M4G, I still expected it to do nothing, and then it did something.
It did. It cost us some extra RAM, and it cost us an extra processor. Is what it did.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was completely unexpected, and that's what happened. And people were on both sides of the fence, but, some people had some legitimate criticism, some people calling out the idea of clickbait. And looking at the title of the article, in retrospect, bearing in mind, I didn't even intend to write this article, so I just threw whatever sounded all right up there. It's not like I sat there, strategizing good SEO stuff. I was like, nope, here's it in a nutshell as to how I feel about it. And people were apparently confused in an opinion piece about how fails to impress at EGX meant that it failed to impress me. But again, looking at some people's reasonable arguments, when I found that when you respond to most people, the vitriolic stance they might have had originally kind of reverts and they become a bit more placid, a bit more like, hey, there's a human being here, not just a computerized article. Do you get what I'm saying? It's not like I don't exist as a person. So from whenever I've responded to certain people that said something, they've usually come back with a more placid and coherent response where I can sit there and say, oh, actually, that's a really fair point. And one person in particular I'd like to, just briefly shout out. We were speaking before the podcast started. Ben Loss, I apologize, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Basically, Ben wrote a very descriptive, lengthy comment on our Final Fantasy 15 article. I'd argue about as big as the article. Like, it was actually quite impressive. And it's coherent and understandable and addresses the professionalism, because we do set up our website to be more than just a blog. You know that, right? Like, you've done that, Russ. That's what you wanted to do. We aren't just a blog. But by that higher standard, we do have a responsibility to be, A, clearer, which is why those titles, obviously, those are something I'm going to look into personally. Try to make them just as appealing without seeming misleading. And B, just to be better with our journal. Like, if we do any journalism, if we're reporting on something, we do need to be clearer about how we feel about it. We do need to be more coherent. And while we aren't professionals, to be clear, we're not. We didn't go to university for this. We haven't worked at a million other websites. It is a learning process. So, if that article pushed you away from MGL, then okay, there's not much I can do about that. I'd argue that it brought more people to MGL for a while than we have had. So that's something good. And from there, we have building blocks. I put up the Origami Let's Play. That's at 20 views maybe on our YouTube. That didn't do very well, and I thought it was well put together. I put up the Origami review. That's doing okay by our usual standards, but not great. You put up the Mafia impressions yesterday. They're doing reasonable. And actually by our usual standards, it's doing very good. So it's like, where is the middle ground for us where we can grab people's attention and still service them in the way that they feel happy about it? Is it that they just won't ever be happy and there'll always be something to talk about? Or is it that we genuinely messed up and we need to address that? And should we become more what they consider to be genuine, will that bring people in? Because honestly, I don't think it does. I see genuine people all the time, and I do feel that my article was still genuine, if misguided. I will say fully that, I do, looking back on it, it feels misguided, but again, like I said in a couple of the tweets, if that said failed to impress me, the comments would have been this, Russ: oh, who cares about you? Who cares about your opinion? And that would have been the comments, because we just know how that goes. Who cares about it?
If there
who
were
care
comments,
about it?
David, the thing is, just to wrap it all up, for the article, on to Final Fantasy 15. I just feel that people can complain about clickbait, but they still click it, and it's not us that's driving it. There are websites that are massively clickbait orientated, where they could put a video on their Twitter and they make you click on the article and go to it. They may well make you go to the article and then click on another page to actually view it after you've seen a slideshow. I don't feel in any way your title was clickbait, but what it was a game that is massively hyped and has got a huge... You've got to remember, this is Final Fantasy 15. This isn't Final Fantasy 1. This game series has been out for a long time, so you've got a huge audience here, and you've basically said that you weren't particularly impressed with it, and you don't think the EGX show of Final Fantasy 15 was particularly to what you expected of the game. And I'm going to throw in now, because I've not entirely been convinced by Final Fantasy 15 for a good year, and I've told you this before, personally speaking, I'm not sure. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's good, because it's not ready yet. I don't know. But what I've played has never made me go, oh, I cannot wait for Final Fantasy 15, and made me, like you've done, pre-order the collector's edition that's like nearly £200.
Yeah. I'm very excited. That's the thing. That was the thing about it, was that's why it was so disappointing for me in that environment. And again, like I did point out in the article, that a lot of people seem to skip over, is that even like the placement of where I played it at the Sony booth, where I didn't realize that Square had a booth over the other side, because I hadn't walked around yet. So I was at the Sony booth waiting to play it. It turns out over at the Sony booth, they had the Square Enix booth, they had the headphones and all that. So I imagine people that played it at Square Enix's booth had a far better time than I did in this cordoned off area at a Sony booth with no headphones. Like, what are you even guarding? This footage was already up. I don't understand.
Yeah.
But the whole thing was just, as you say, like, in regards to what you're saying about, people can call clickbait. Again, I don't agree with clickbait, but I do agree with the idea that it was unintentionally misleading. I do agree with people's analysis of, okay, I can understand why you would interpret it this way and why it feels like it's an address of the people of EGX and not just my own personal perspective. So looking at it like that and not just shouting clickbait, that's one very particular thing that I can 100% go, okay, do you know what? My bad. I'm going to, in the future, I'm going to look at that. I'm going to make sure that when I put this out, especially as an opinion piece and not as a news story, that is something that needs to be addressed very clearly so that anybody that clicks on it, it's not so much about undermining somebody's intelligence, rather than being 100% bulletproof. Do you get what I mean? Like, At that point, it's like, well, you can call it this. If you look at your article and when someone questions it, you can't immediately defend it and be 100% resolved in that, there is something wrong. And that's what happened with me, was I saw that and said, maybe. And the moment that maybe was there was something wrong. So that's how, you have to be able to self-analyze these things and say, not just get, again, like I responded to another person on our website, Riley, who initially seemed quite vitriolic and then responded with a more coherent thing after my response. And I stated, I was like, okay, that's the first time someone's coherently put across why they feel that way. And I appreciate that, because now I understand better where you're coming from to call it misleading. And that's important for that feedback from us as well. If we're going to have a community, Russ, we need to be able to speak to that community, and we need to be able to accept how they feel, combat it sometimes if we don't agree and we're staunchly, defensive about our point. But, with something as divisive as Final Fantasy 15 is at its very core, even in me, who I am very excited about Final Fantasy 15, but that demo was the first time I'd so close to the game's launch where I thought, I'm hoping maybe it's better when I'm at home. That was the thing. I was like, and to be clear, there is so much that I do like about the game, which is in that article. The story looks great. I'm not upset about the supposed boy band, look. I actually, if you watch the Brotherhood anime, which I have, again, a lot of these people probably haven't, right? I am now familiar with these characters in a way that I'm like, oh, so they're not just their clothes, which is what people seem to be really hung up on. Oh, wait, they actually have personalities. There is more to these characters than you're giving them credit for just because they're in a car on a bro trip. Come on. So, there are defense points I can make for Final Fantasy 15 all day, but that demo, in my experience, wasn't one of them. And most of that is environmental based. So really, I can understand people's vitriolic ways with it, but, come across the way that Ben did, please. Come across the way that a lot of people did, and be coherent. You ain't got to write a massive article like Ben did, but, if you're going to have a problem with it, have the decency to be like, look, this specifically is why. And there you go. And I'm like, oh, okay. I hear you out.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's the thing. It's the thing with the internet. Very easy to leave a quick comment. A lot of people leave comments just after reading a title. That tends to be one of the problems I've seen in the past with it. But Final Fantasy 15 hype. Do we feel like it's getting into that little hype machine that maybe, shall we say, Destiny got in, that the Division got in, and the output at the end is never, you've already said No Man's Sky. I mean, is the output at the end never going to live up to the expectation? Because the development time alone, the kind of the ideas of what are being published all seem to be being positive. Everyone seems to be reacting to them in a way that says, oh, well, this is going to be the best game of the year. And do we feel like it's in that kind of territory where it's so far down the hype road, if you like, people aren't willing to maybe see that when it comes out, well, it could actually have some problems with it?
No, and I say that it's a very good point, Russ. But in my opinion, from what I've read, from what I've seen, no, I don't think it's in that hype machine, because I actually think this game can live up to, like, not necessarily the level of hype that will unnaturally just come from 10 years of people waiting for something. That it's insurmountable. It's a mountain of insurmountable hype that cannot be met. So it is on the consumer to, like, rein in their expectations just a little bit and understand that this game won't change your life. You won't fly to 2,000 galaxies and plant your seed in a home somewhere in the middle of a crater on a moon. Like, what, it's not going to happen like that. Obviously referencing No Man's Sky at that point. With Final Fantasy 15, people were already kind of shattered by 13. Their illusions of what Final Fantasy was completely destroyed with Final Fantasy 13. And 13.2 continued to do that with its tendency to lean on paradoxes. And 13.3 got pretty much ignored, despite the fact that it had a really good battle system. But the story was trash, and the characters were trash because they had to rely on what they'd already set as a foundation. They really wanted us to like Lightning, Russ.
They did.
They really did. And I'm not saying that nobody did. I'm not speaking for the internet. I'm not saying it failed to impress the EGX. What I'm saying is that Lightning was a very stoic version. Essentially, she almost felt like a Cloud clone, in my opinion. To be clear, in my opinion. And I don't really feel she never got there. They never got there with her.
One game was enough for Lightning, wasn't it? One game was enough, and
the one game that was enough for her was the last game they did, which was number 3, and it was actually really, like, it was a good game. To play. Hampered, yeah, it was fairly well structured, had a decent world. It was just hampered by this nonsense storyline that came out of nowhere, and that bleeds into the reluctance to be into Final Fantasy 15 at first for a lot of people when it was Versus 13, and then it got re-announced at, what was it, the 2013 E3, I think. This is now Final Fantasy 15. Hajime Tabata he's the dude now, and Nomura's going over to Kingdom Hearts 3. This is the thing now. We're going to do this. We've gotten rid of the original kind of idea, but we still have Noctis, and it got redesigned in that sense that from there, the new hype train began. Because it was now, this is a numbered entry now. This means something. This is the saving grace after 13. And that's where that hype train starts. Now, I do not feel for a second it's going to be a bad game at all. I don't think if for some freakish occurrence this is a bad game, that something needs to be looked at that point, because Final Fantasy has already had a council made up for it at Square Enix. Full of genuinely they have a Final Fantasy
council.
They have a Final Fantasy. I would love to be on it. Apparently, you've got to work there for 50 years. I don't know, but they have an actual council now to oversee the quality of Final Fantasy.
Nice, and
that is interesting. 14's a very good product online, so a lot of people kind of like, it's got a sub, so people kind of back away, but the people that are into it are really into it. I did that whole bloody marathon from
you did
that in a month. I got to the Heaven's Ward content, and then we got Heaven's Ward, and I was so burnt out I couldn't play Heaven's Ward, so that was really weird. But Final Fantasy has had this kind of resurgence in faith to an extent, but a numbered entry in the mainline series that's not an online game has not had a proven success in a while. You know what I mean? Like Final Fantasy 13 was the last traditional numbered entry.
Yeah.
And now we're getting 15. And I do believe that it will be good at least, and that's where I've tempered myself. And I believe the spectacle is going to be incredible. I think, but I need to know where else we're going to go. In a way, I'm glad we're not getting told everything about this game. I think we're going to go into this and there's going to be so much that we're not being shown. That's why we've always been shown that grassy plains area and occasionally the actual city of, Illuminus or something in the world of Eos. And I do believe there's going to be so much more to it But if the majority is just this grassy plain, it looks cool. I'm sure it'll be great and filled with secrets. But where do we go from there? It needs something to drive it, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the antagonist does. I don't know if you noticed the dude with the purple hair.
Yeah, he's an interesting character.
Again, I've forgotten his name, and we're currently recording the podcast, so I'm not looking it up because that's just going to interrupt things. But he's the Chancellor. I know that he's the Chancellor because I watched Kingslave recently, which, visually stunning. It's questionable on the plot, but either way, Final Fantasy 15, I'm still excited. I didn't go and cancel my, as you say, £190 pre-order from Square Enix. It's still there. It's still sat there. I am still confident about this game to an extent.
To nearly £200 of an extent, you are confident.
Exactly. Well, I mean, I think that was always going to happen regardless. I want that figure. I want that whole package. It just looks cool. But as I've said to a lot of people, cautiously optimistic is where I'm at. I do believe it could live up to it.
I am on the side of right now. People expect, or should I say, the people caught up in the hype of this. I think they are expecting a 10 out of 10 game of the year level of, not just like game of the year in the RPG category, literally the best game of the year. And I'm not sure it's going to deliver that. And if people are measuring it by a 10 out of 10 standard, I'm not sure they're going to get it. I do think that what it will have is quite an interesting story. I think they've let themselves down in the past where, especially with, I mean, I even go back to 12. I know that people insult 13, but I'll go back to 12. The game was fun to play, but the actual story, I mean, I lost interest in it personally. The characters were good. The overall plot was not so great.
Are you familiar with what happened with 12?
Yeah.
I can tell you very briefly.
No. I enjoyed 12. If you ask me my favourite Final Fantasy games of all time, I will tell you now, two of them. Final Fantasy X is the best game for me, and Final Fantasy VII is the best overall tale told for me. Obviously, nostalgia gets in when you're talking about something like Final Fantasy VII because it was in my childhood.
And 10 is nostalgia based.
10 is towards
staunchly.
nostalgia. 10 is towards nostalgia, but I just think from start to finish, Final Fantasy X is exceptional. I really enjoyed it. I love the leveling system. The sphere grid's so addictive to play. The story's great. It's really well done throughout. I hope we get that again in 15. I hope we return to a really good story. But I'm just worried they're really focusing so heavily on this action combat that they're putting so much in there, it loses something else for it. But I'm optimistic, like you say. I'm just not right now. I'm not expecting this to be 10 out of 10 game of the year quality. Maybe what should be expected after a decade's worth of work. But I'm not sure it's going to get there, but I do think it will be a very, very good game, and one that so many people that love the series are just going to dive on board and fall in love with and have arguments over whether it is better than Final Fantasy X or 9 or 7. Sorry, I missed out 8 then. I really shouldn't miss out 8 because 8's outstanding as well. But yeah, no, I'm not convinced I'm on the side with you. I'm not convinced it's going to be as good as what people have hyped it up to be, but from what I've played, there's more than enough to say it's going to be a very, very good game.
Yeah, that's precisely it. Again, you and I were on the side of things where, as I said earlier, we're not professionals, but we do approach things with a bit more tact than a lot of people. We're not die-hard fans. I don't know about you. I'm a big fan of video games as a whole. I'm a big enthusiast of video games, but doing that, you learn not to let yourself become too invested in something that you aren't actually physically invested in. You can't do that to yourself because you are setting yourself up for disappointment. I did that with Tales of Zestiria. I would swear blind to anyone that asked. Right, Tales of games can do no wrong, and that game did wrong. That game did not. You can ask anyone that plays Tales games. It was good. That's the reaction I always get. How do you feel about Zestiria? It was good. Yeah. Like, that very tentative, whereas Exilia, or Xillia, however you want to pronounce it, and its sequel, and Vesperia, like, inarguable to me as a person. For like, from my opinion, I would not argue against those games at all. If you said to me, should I play these, like, have you got 100 hours? Just like, have you got 100 hours? Because if you've got 100 hours, here's where you can spend them. Go play Vesperia. Go play Exilia 2. Like, just play these games, especially Exilia 2 in regards to the Exilia games. That game, you need to play one. So there we're talking like, 100 to 200 hours. Okay. So at that point, we're talking ridiculousness for people like yourselves with full-time jobs. It's becoming a problem. But yeah, we just learn not to get that invested. And that leaves us happy when something turns out good, and we move on when things don't.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't do that, and they sit there dwelling in the past, or they sit there stewing, waiting for something, and then it just can't live up to what they want. And I want to be clear. We can talk about how people, it's a mistake to do this. I really hope that it is a great game, like truly, because I want it to come out, and whenever a game comes out, I want people to be happy about it. I don't like seeing the No Man's Skies of the world, but it needs to be said by people, and there are going to be people that are staunchly against that. And I think it's just about tempering your expectations, Russ. You gotta know that it's not the end of the road. There are so many good games out these days, so many that you've probably missed. And if this game doesn't live up to your expectations, maybe Persona 5 will in February. Give Persona a go. Horizon Zero Dawn will do it next year. Come on, realize that there is something beyond the horizon, even beyond Horizon Zero Dawn.
Ooh.
That's just the way that works, Russ. That's how the weird puns work, and I know the internet hates puns, so suck on that.
Suck on my pun. Moving on from sucking on puns.
I love you really, by the way.
No, it's cool, man. It's good. We're all happy. I mean, let's just move on a little bit. Final Fantasy 15, just to wrap up. We all hope it's good. Nobody wants a game of that level of kind of fandom and
a top franchise kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just we want that to be the kind of the rebirth of Final Fantasy in this modern time. Let's just do it. Let's make sure it works, but they've got to deliver, they've got to work, they've got to deliver, they've got to make it right. And if it's rubbing people the wrong way, there is a chance that it's not going to be as great as people think it's going to be. Let's hope they iron that out, and let's hope that code that you played was massively old and towards maybe 9 months away from when it was built to what we'll actually get when it releases in December.
It likely was, yeah.
So let's have a talk about Mafia 3. Mafia 3 has released, as we record this today, Friday the 7th of October. And I did a little bit of an article that was nowhere near the level of David's crazy Final Fantasy madness, but some people read it, some people put some nice comments on, some people weren't so sure about the game. Now I just put a case together, and I just said that I thought Mafia 3 had the ingredients being the key word there, to say it could contest for being in the kind of game of year territories. You've got action adventure games all over, open world games all over, but I just thought this one had a number of different elements to the game that made me think, wow, if they pulled that off, if that all works, that could really, really do well, within its own kind of area. So, I think the main character you play is a guy called Lincoln Clay, and you're out for revenge. Fantastic plot point for a game. It's a wonderful premise to start. And just every time I see his character and his giant scar on his head that runs all the way down the side and out the back, it looks like he had a serious run-in when he was in the Vietnamese War. And the actual choices to the game and the world that you play in, this 1968 New Bordeaux adventure to get involved with, to take over turf. You have lieutenants that look after things for you. It's got parts to it, for me, David, that look like something I really, really want to play. And whenever I've seen it, I've seen a few live streams, I watched a bit last night, and I thought everything looked pretty nice. The thing is, Hangar 13, the developer, and 2K Games, the publisher, these kind of things take some experience to kind of pull it all together. And I'm just a little bit unsure, final package, if it's going to be pulled together. And I'm wondering if, whatever excuse they made, if that's why they didn't maybe release reviews on launch day and they didn't send any pre-release copies out.
I hear what you're saying. I think we should have learned from Doom by now that that's not necessarily the case. They didn't release anything before launch, and everyone was worried.
But that was
Everyone panicked.
Bethesda, in fairness.
Yeah, I mean, but same principle. It's the same like when the games are coming up for release. It's normally press gets some streamers get some, and that's just how that goes to build the hype for the release. And everyone's like, hey, check us out. And people got early. People did from mum and grub shops and whatnot, as Greg Miller would say. They did get early copies of Mafia 3, not through 2K, and it is 2K, isn't it, Mafia?
Yeah, sure. 2K games.
Publisher wise, yeah, just making sure. Like, I wanted to be very clear that that's actually a fact and not an opinion, Ross. That 2K do that.
Fact, it is 2K Games publishing this one made by Hangar 13.
That is not something that I could get wrong in a title, right there. So the point is that these games not coming out for reviewers or whoever you want to talk about, that does not mean that the game's bad. It might mean, again, this is something I'm taking from a lot of the podcasts I've listened to, that there is a big old patch coming in and they really don't want people who would officially put up content saying, hey, game's broken. So maybe there's going to be a day one patch that's going to fix some things that perhaps need a bit of polish. But honestly, I'm not too invested in Mafia. You know that, Ross. Like, I read the article. I think it sounds interesting. It does seem like a good game. Mafia, I guess, it's got a very, I don't want to say niche following, but, it has a very quiet group of people that are really excited for Mafia, and that exists. But it's never been Grand Theft Auto. It's seemingly been more of a period piece, more of a a snapshot in time for this, rather than a parody. It's more like this is how the world was then kind of thing, which is a more interesting kind of serious take on what, say, Grand Theft Auto would do, which would be like take all the craziest things going on and make like a satire out of it. Yes. So Mafia's always been, it's always done that, more of a simulation, I guess. When people were talking about the first Mafia, you had to actually stop at traffic lights, obey traffic laws. Ooh. That's not, I mean, I'm glad they didn't do that anymore, because someone must have said, hey, that's not fun. And Mafia 2 apparently was a much bigger world with less of those restrictions. Yeah. But from what I hear, it was quite empty. Again, this is anecdotal. I don't know firsthand. So Mafia 3...
I had a go. I mean, Mafia 2 was... I think it became free on PlayStation Plus at some point. So I did have a play of it. And I enjoyed it. I liked the story element of it. I'd agree with what you're saying there. The world was nice. It was nice. You drive around it. It was cool. It had a bit of the feel of the era. I can't remember the year exactly, but it's not so far before this game in the 90s.
It was the 50s, wasn't it?
Late 50s ish. And it was a good game. And you can see sometimes you play a game, and one of my favorite games is Spec Ops: The Line, and that is not a perfect game. It's got rough edges, and there's just some bits of it that are a bit off, and it's really, really hard, especially if you play it on tough difficulty. And you can see why a game like Mafia and those type of things get like a really cult following, and they think, oh yeah, I really like that, even in spite of its flaws. You could argue Destiny's got a bit of a cult following. I mean, although it
definitely does
much better now than years ago, which is something I'll be covering on my Games Lounge this week. But I just hope that when sometimes you just look at something and you think, whoa, this game could be for me. Well, actually, this game could be for quite a lot of people, and it's going to get compared to the marker for the open world games. And I'm not referring to the Ubisoft that think they're the marker for open world games. I'm referring to, obviously, Grand Theft Auto and the geniuses there at Rockstar Games, because this is actually a bit more like L.A. Noire, and I loved L.A. Noire. It was a fantastic game. It was a different tone to Grand Theft Auto, but I loved it from start to finish. So if it gets me anywhere close to that, but a little bit darker and takes me into like the kind of the nitty gritty of the mob, I'm really looking forward to it. Hopefully, my copy should be at home waiting for me, which will be meaning I'll be doing some writing over the weekend and put some impressions up and see what y'all think.
I imagine that'll be, as you say, over the weekend and into next week. That'll be Mafia 3 for you. So that's
Mafia
going to
3
be...
and Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered, sir, which is awesome, by the way.
Of course.
Wow, I've never played Modern Warfare. I missed the whole COD thing. I was never a big Call of Duty fan. I've only picked it up recently. I was more of a Battlefield person, so obviously Battlefield 1's the one I've had my eye on. And I skipped Modern Warfare. I wasn't that bothered about it at the time. Everyone was raving about it, but you know me on multiplayer. You know how good I am. It
Top
seemed
notch, man. Top notch.
top notch at finishing bottom. Yeah, just run in, shoot at something that looks like a person, and then get knifed in the back. That's usually my style.
Try and dip out. You might get out, but it's unlikely.
Not happening. But I never played I didn't realize the campaign was so good. I played a few hours last night. I need to put some stuff up on My Games Lounge. We can't review it yet because the multiplayer is not active, but I definitely need to put some coverage up for it. It's really, really, really good, and they've done a fantastic job of the remaster. Fantastic job. They've really, like sometimes when you think, oh, they've done a remaster, yeah, they've made the trees look a bit more like trees.
I love trees looking like trees.
Yeah, oh wow, that tree. It doesn't look flat anymore.
See that tree?
Wow, it's got depth.
It's leafy.
It's so leafy. And the bush next to it, the bush. Oh my god, there are so many strands. No.
So bushy.
So bushy. This is not that kind of podcast.
Later on, there's a news piece that might get into that, but carry on.
But no, they've put some work in. They've really they've put some effort into actually making the game feel like it's more than just your average. We've polished this. They seem to have gone into a lot of detail with everything. Little things like where you'd walk past something, and in a modern game, if you bump into it, things fall off. Whereas when it was on the PlayStation, everything was kind of a static, drawn thing. It didn't move. They've really gone to town on making the environments seem a lot more like a modern game than when it was released. I've only played about 3 hours on it, but I was really, really impressed, and I'll do some notes on that one for everyone. But no, just to sum up on Mafia, please do us a favour. We are in the same position as every other website out there, so if you've got some thoughts on what Mafia 3 is like, whether you like it, whether you don't, we're getting the usual stuff on Metacritic where you've got for every vote you've got, it kind of goes like this, David. Let me go like this. So we've got 10, amazing, 10, 10, 10,
yep.
None. None. So you can't really get a decent score out of that, can you? Because
Metacritic is the internet in a nutshell. It's either amazing or it's nothing.
Yeah, there are a few 8s and 7s and people that have tried to
people being reasonable.
They've tried to use words. There's there's one with commas in it and everything.
And punctuation on Metacritic.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's very good. But yeah, there's lots of 10 and 0, so that it's not even comprehensive at the moment. A lot of people that are commenting are saying it's good, but there are a few bits I don't like, which is kind of the same for every game, really, I guess. So yeah, if you're playing Mafia 3 and you've got some thoughts on it, drop us a comment on this article on mygameslounge.com. If you're watching on YouTube where we publish this, you will be able to get to the link to the article there, or just drop a comment on the YouTube. We'll get back to you and talk about what you think of the game. It's cool. But yeah, I'm looking forward to playing it. Keep on My Games Lounge for my thoughts. Last up, we've got about, how long have we got left, David? We've got about 15 minutes or so.
That all we got? Right. Okay.
I am at work at this point, by the way, everybody in Gamerland, and just like hiding in a room, hoping no one finds me. What were you bringing? You were bringing some stuff to do with was it PlayStation VR, or was it to do with the
It was many
news?
things. PlayStation VR is obviously a hot topic this week, but seeing as if you've only got 15 minutes, I'm going to have to tear through this. Okay, so PlayStation VR, I'd say positive, mixed reception, mostly. Some people, for instance, Giant Bomb, I watched their 5-hour live stream, because that's what I do, and their thoughts on it as people that actually use PCs, and they've used the Vive, they've done live streams for the Vive and the Oculus. It is arguably the weakest headset for them, as people that really get into VR headsets, not from like they're enthusiasts or anything, but they actually look at this stuff in depth, and you can see that in their live streams. So these are that's a crew of people that would really know their VR. Whereas, for instance, Kind of Funny with Greg and Colin, when they did PS I Love You, really enjoyed the PSVR. That is something they've really kind of gravitated towards. They say, like, it's this next step in gaming, which I have actually always believed VR does provide that possibility. And for the PlayStation at its entry point, when you've already got a PlayStation 4, that becomes a much cheaper prospect and a more entry level prospect.
Yeah, I don't think Sony have ever tried to hide the fact it's probably not as strong as the others, have they? I think they've made it more the accessible VR and the affordable VR and the fun VR. I think the strength with the Sony virtual reality system is going to be the games, I guess.
Yes.
Because obviously people are making things for the Vive and the Oculus, but Sony are Sony, and they make very good games, regardless of what side you sit on, whether you're an Xbox person, a PlayStation person, or like me and Dave, you can see both sides and even on both consoles. It's got that kind of Sony polish on it, and they can produce quality games. And what they can do is, as well, on games they've kind of already made or upcoming exclusives, they can have virtual reality compatible elements to it, which I think that's the main selling point for them. I don't think they're trying to compete at the top level, are they?
No, they're not trying to compete, but unfortunately they are competing just by being in the market with that new technology. So it's actually, that's the thing. It's not their choice as to whether or not they're competing. They are competing. Like, they don't get to say, well, ours isn't the top. Right? No, you have a VR headset and you are selling VR games. You are in competition with the other VR headsets. That's like, there's shared games across platforms, but there's Oculus are trying to sign up, certain games just for their platform, at least timed exclusives. Sony are doing the same thing. Vive, I don't actually know if Vive are doing anything like that, but that's Valve, and Valve don't really operate like anybody else. No. So, and again, Valve, the HTC Vive seems to be the most engaging prospect for people if you have a room that you can play in because of the room scale VR. Oculus seems to be, again, that thing that people are gravitating towards if they have a decent PC. Although Oculus, there's some stuff going on there this week, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But then we've got PSVR I think is a great entry point for the VR experience on, as we believe it to be. Like, people talk about the Samsung Gear VR, and I hear good things about it, but I don't think it's like that upper echelon of what people are talking about in the VR space, whereas the PlayStation VR is that entry point, in my opinion. But unfortunately, we're talking from a place of second-hand knowledge, because we don't have a PlayStation VR, unfortunately.
No, it's a shame.
We have none, in terms of MGL, and we don't have any personally. I'm not looking to invest quite yet. I'm going to give it a bit of time. And I cancelled, I had my pre-order ready. I was ready for it, and then I said, no, I'm gonna think about this a bit more. So, moving directly onto some news, Ross, if you don't mind. Over at IGN, taking a page out of Colin Moriarty's book in Colin and Greg Live, going to read a bit of news from around the web. Joe Scrabbles at IGN writes, Destiny Rise of Iron Raid gets heroic mode release date. So the hard mode, which is Destiny's, term, the heroic mode they're calling it now, will be unlocked for Rise of Iron's Wrath of the Machine raid on the 18th of October, saying completing the extra tough battle against Axis and his various minions will reward players with loot with up to 400 light level, making it the only means so far of reaching the game's new and possibly final level cap. Announcing the date on the Bungie blog, community manager Deej wrote, have you ventured deep... Well, Deej saying Deej stuff. No offense to Deej. Basically doing PR, right? So, that's it. That's that news there. Destiny's getting its hard mode for Wrath of the Machine. I fell off of Destiny recently again. I enjoyed my time with Rise of Iron, but yeah, as I said in that article I did, Ross, that did relatively well. It seems like we all knew what it would be, is a bit of a stopgap. It's still more Destiny. I love a bit more Destiny, but yeah, I'm pretty much, done until Destiny 2 now, personally.
Yeah, I came back to Destiny, as you know, sir. And I'll tell you this, and I will tell people out there in Gamerland, if you avoided Destiny, or you got it, it wasn't what you thought it was going to be when you first played it and you moved on like I did, or you just never ever played it, now is a really, really good time to actually play, because it is so much more of a full experience. I I've come back to it, and whilst I still accept there are some things in that game that even the developers probably wish weren't there, it's really, really good, and it is a lot of fun to play. If you get the collection, you get the nice spark of light, so you don't need to feel intimidated that everyone else is so high level, because you go straight up to level 40. And that does make a difference, although it's not completely pointless that you're top level and you're killing everything, because it doesn't actually unlock all the abilities of your chosen kind of specialist class. So you do have some work to do still, but you can still kind of compete and you get some cool weapons and things. I have really enjoyed it. I went Titan this time. I was a Warlock originally, and I do miss him a little bit. But I would say personally, David, if you're unsure what to play this month, and you're waiting until everything calms down and prices drop a little bit, if you can pick up on a decent offer the Destiny collection with everything together, that is actually a really, really good package, I would say. I'm writing up my final piece on Destiny this week, but it's been so busy, so there's only so much you can write at once. I like Destiny. I am Destiny's friend once again, and I am looking forward to Destiny 2, where I hope they sort it out fully.
Yes, indeed, I agree with Destiny. In particular, I want to be clear, with Destiny, I do firmly believe, while Russ is majorly playing solo, if you are looking to get into the deeper content of the game, in particular the raids, which are fantastic, you do want to be playing with friends. There are options to you in the Destiny landscape. There are plenty of like Destiny LFG. You can search Google some groups and you'll see it. There's plenty of people, very helpful community, very inclusive community. So yeah, I would recommend having friends to play with, but if you don't, there are options there. But don't leave Destiny without at least playing one of the raids. You have to, because that is the pinnacle of the experience. Now I'm going to move swiftly on to another bit of news regarding 2K, who we talked about earlier with Mafia. Apparently, Russ, they haven't been doing too well with their PC ports recently. 2K Games, this is written by Matt Wales over at Kotaku. 2K Games has finally patched up its troublesome BioShock collection on PC. So apparently BioShock was having some issues. I had a couple of issues on the PS4, but this is apparently the PC had some, features weren't really there. Do you know what I mean, Russ?
Was it Batman Arkham Knight levels of issues?
I mean, not that I can see here, but just stuff that PC players would expect to play. Again, we're not PC aficionados or anything like that, but I am familiar that PC gamers do have a very, very particular set of things that they kind of expect to come to their platform, and it may seem that 2K did not deliver on that at the time. But now it's apparently being patched up, which is apparently a disappointing PC port, according to Matt Wales. Going down, you'll see in BioShock 1, the field of view is now adjustable from 75 to 130 in the graphics option menu. 21 by 9 resolutions are now available. The UI supports 2 models, stretch or centered at these resolutions. Resolved several graphics issues on NVIDIA hardware. New graphics options available for lower-end machines, so I guess it's going to run better on the lower-end machines. That's good. Mouse buttons 4 and 5 assignments fixed. Mouse icon size now adjustable and will scale with resolution. Several improvements have been made to mouse sensitivity, threshold, and buffering. Settings will no longer automatically reset on improperly shut down BioShock. Speaker mode should now be selectable from the audio options menu, and fixed an initialization bug with audio systems, plus some miscellaneous bug fixes. That's in BioShock 1. BioShock 2 is relatively, it's pretty much all the same, except fixed several graphical issues in occlusion culling, which I believe is a mission in BioShock 2, but I actually haven't played BioShock 2, and also DirectX 11 performance improvements. So that's basically the gist of it. BioShock's been patched on the PC. That's number 1 and 2 in particular for the troubles that apparently it's had. Let us know if there are more troubles that we need to talk about. Personally, I don't know too much about them. I was just reading off of Matt Wales' article here.
Can I just piss off every PC gamer in the world and just say, I have no idea what you just said. I have no idea what you just said.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine, Russ.
My mouse has 2 buttons. My mouse has 2 buttons. What's button 5?
Button 5 for me is the thumb button next to me. I play Warcraft, so I've got... yeah.
Is that like triangle or something?
It's kind of like... Yeah, it's just a button assignment, mate. The more you've got to hand, the better... Yeah, it is what it is. So,
I'm being facetious. I'm trying to make every PC gamer hate me for my console-loving love.
They will.
They already
I believe they are a vengeful group.
They'll come after me with their extra mouse buttons.
That is what, mate. You don't want to be on the receiving end of that. That's why they don't do crossplay with PC a lot of the time.
Maybe they do maybe it's slightly different to The Godfather, where they come in they'll just put extra mouse buttons in my bed next to me whilst I sleep.
There's mouse wires just lying next to you. But more importantly, when we're talking about this stuff, obviously, while we're not trying to be disingenuous with the PC stuff, just to be clear, we just know that we do have PC gamers that do read our website and they are interested in this news. So that's why I like to service them just a little bit in the podcast.
We love you, PC gamers. We love you.
We do. I do. Ross is angry. So we're going to move on from Kotaku's article now, and we're going to go to what I thought was a Polygon article, but unfortunately it's just a bunch of stuff on Polygon that I was looking at. So I'm going to just move on from that now. Oh, wait, it was because I opened it in a different window. Okay, so 2K once again. I forgot about this. Mafia 3 gets slammed on Steam for frame rate lock. 2K responds. Yeah, so Mafia 3, PC gamers are unhappy with the new Mafia's 30 FPS limit. This is an article by Michael McWhirter over at Polygon, talking about how on the eve of the launch, the game's getting lambasted by Steam users. Its frame rate, which is currently locked at 30 frames per second. Now, 2K have responded, and they say an update for Mafia 3 is coming soon that will improve the game's performance. You can go read that over at Polygon. There's a lot to kind of read there, but basically, 2K are aware of the, let's say, displeasure around that decision. PC gamers really don't like to have their frame rates locked. They've got a heart.
You can. I'm going to side in with you on this, PC gamers. I'm back with you. I mean, you can understand them capping a frame rate, maybe not 30 frames a second, but you can understand them capping a frame rate on a console because you've got a set parameter in which to work. But come on, PC, they want all the frames. They don't want a setting that says 30 frames a second, 60 frames a second. They want one that says all the frames per second. And
is there a missing frame? Put the game back.
All of the frames. We want them all. So yeah, that is poor. They need to sort that out.
Yeah, and again, to be clear on 2K's response, they have responded. They are saying they are looking to fix it. So we'll see how that turns out. Maybe next week we'll talk about how 2K have been championing their faulty games coming out. So I mean, I say faulty, that's BioShock, and that's to be very clear specifically about that. But all in all, not a bad thing. They have responded. They're working on it. Moving on to the lewdness I was talking about earlier, Ross. So when you said the internet,
we were talking about Bush.
Yes, we were talking about Bush. Now there is no Bush to be found here.
Is this
over
Stan
at Crunchyroll? Well, it could be Stan Bush, which we're talking about. We've got no news on Shadow Warrior 2 at this point in time, so that's not really nothing new anyway, or substantial to talk about. But in regards to a lack of Bush, over on Crunchyroll, for those of you that may enjoy anime, well, let me tell you this, Russ. Are you ready for this description?
I don't know.
Keijo. You are not ready, but you're about to hear it. Okay, so I'm going to do this in the movie trailers style accent. You ready?
Go.
Ahem. Nozomi Kamanashi is a fantastic gymnast, and in order to help her family out of poverty, has decided to instead become a competitor in a new women-only sport, Keijo. Or Kaijo. I don't believe it's Kaijo, though. A lucrative endeavor. Keijo is a popular gambling sport where female players stand on floating platforms on the water and must push other players off by only using their breasts and buttocks. Will Nozomi be able to make it big in the worst of Keijo? Find out in Keijo.
Oh,
right, so...
Wow.
Yes, and I watched the trailer and I was like, that actually might be good. It looks right. That's the thing. I'm expecting this trash heap of and it is incredibly fan servicey, but my God, Russ, does it look interesting as hell. So I do believe that what I'm going to do is I'm going to watch Keijo. It's an episode a week, and when we come back to do this podcast, as we will, Russ, because we need to be more consistent with this, I will be doing a rundown of how Keijo has gone that week.
Wow.
And yeah,
wow.
I am both not looking forward to it and looking forward to it. So that should be, again, in my very ambivalent way, as Ben Lose pointed out on the Final Fantasy 15 article, I am conflicted, very much so, with KHO. So that'll be interesting, Ross.
Yeah, that definitely just happened
You
on the
sound
podcast.
flustered.
Yeah,
It did.
That happened.
It will continue to happen.
I was there. If I may interject one last thing before we sign off for this week, sir. I will talk about episodes now, but mine is more of a kind of a PG approach and I hope none of the people on this show so far, apart from Rachel Riley maybe, do anything with their buttocks or their boobs. I have started watching a wonderful show that everyone should put the game pads down and just spend about an hour a week watching, and it's called Go 8-Bit on Dave, and it's fantastic. Now, obviously, game show type quiz show things where everyone has a bit of a laugh, and it's all about it's more about the comedy than it is about the points and who wins, celebrity juice and all those kind of things. But this one is all about gaming, and it's all about gamers. And they come together and they play games and they see who wins and they score points and the audience get involved. And it is so good. It's possibly the best show I've ever watched on like mainstream TV that's had anything to do with games since Games Master, like when I was growing up. So I'm going to put a little bit of stuff about that on my Games Lounge on Monday, which is the day it's on the channel Dave. Here in the UK, but if you can watch, I don't know how it works abroad. If you're allowed to watch that, if you're listening in other countries, but if you can see a show called Go 8-Bit, have a little watch. It's really funny, and you've got some celebrity people on there, and they're just sharing the kind of experience of what games they liked when they were a kid, and then they play them. There was Russell Howard, comedian guy, really funny guy, taking on Rachel Riley at Sensible Soccer. And there were also Bob Mortimer, who's a bit of a comedian over here. He was talking about his love of Resident Evil and how he liked to kill zombies. And they did a bit of a Resident Evil challenge. And it was really good. And what I've liked about it as well so far is they're quite good at bringing on some indie guys. They got some people we know from Bone Loaf to put the fantastic Gang Beasts on. And that was on the show. And they had it's a fantastic game, and they got that on the show, and they were all, the audience was clapping along, and it's just, when you do see so many mainstream things that are kind of gaming is bad, it was just nice to see something to be so positive, that lots of people could share like in the audience and enjoy, but also to watch. It was really entertaining, and I thought that it's hosted by Dara O'Brien, who does the gaming BAFTAs, and he's a big gamer himself. But and the good
I love
thing
Dara O'Brien.
Yeah, he's just it. I mean, and the guys on it as well. You're not talking. This isn't a show for kids. The guys on it are, late 20s, early 30s, 40s, 50s. These are people that have grown up with them. So you're not just going to get, Call of Duty and things. They did have Star Wars Battlefront on one of the episodes that went down quite well. But you're getting people that are going to talk about where gaming heritage came from, and it's really cool to see people taking on challenges in Pac-Man now. And they do a few, they did one that was kind of track and field, but they physically had to do it. They made some giant buttons, and they had one person pressing one button, and they had to do it in sequence. It was really good. I'd recommend anyone watches Go 8-Bit, and get on mygameslounge.com on Monday, and I'll put a piece together on why I think it's so good, because it's just the kind of thing that's better to write out, I think. But Dave, have you watched it?
I have not watched it.
You need to watch it, sir. It's fantastic.
I've cut the cord, man. Does Dave have like an online service? Cause
yeah. I think if you're BBC iPlayer, that
is that what it is? Okay. I'll look into it then. BBC iPlayer is a weird thing.
It's really funny.
I don't like watching, the ads. I know they help, and I know
on demand, no ads. I don't watch it live. I download the on demand, zero ads. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because I missed Red Dwarf as well. Red Dwarf started, series 11.
Oh, it's funny. It's very funny.
Yeah, I figured it would be. I'm looking forward to it.
Again, on demand, no adverts.
That's the thing. Now that I know, I don't really. That's the thing. Crunchyroll, Netflix, and Funimation. Pretty much the things I circulate in terms of media.
Boobs and ass.
So we've got nothing to say about Luke Cage quite yet, which is a hot topic because I haven't watched it.
No. I want to. I'll do a weekend binge, but there's just, unfortunately, TV and games have all just decided Fuck it, let's release in October.
Yeah.
October. Yeah. Be right.
No,
no one else
great.
the start of October.
Ruining anybody that does practically just 2 people at the website. Like, you know, we've got obviously Neil, we've got Martin, we've got Kat, but, you know, we are here at the moment.
Yeah,
That's the problem. So on the final note, Ross, I've got a way of finishing the podcast. Beautiful. Unless you got something else you want to say?
You finish it off. I'm still recovering from the whole
the Keijo.
Yeah,
yes.
Keijo,
I hear your 8-bit game on Dave thing, but I raise you boobs and butts.
You win.
I do always.
Boobs and butts always drawn.
Not of exactly. That's what makes them so. You know, I imagine the perkiness level at that point. There's a certain degree of I'm trying not to suspend your disbelief at that point. So the perfect way to end the podcast about boobs and butts is with the most family-friendly company, Nintendo. And how we're going to do that is the NX. Still a mystery, Ross. Still a mystery.
It's a mystery wrapped in an enigma.
Indeed.
Wrapped in shadows.
I have nothing to add to that analogy. But each week from now on, Ross, and I'm going to start us this week so that I'm not blindsiding you. You can be prepared for next week.
I'm ready.
We are going to come up with the name for the NX. We're going to, they haven't named it yet, and it's not going to be the NX. If that thing releases as the NX, okay, why did you throw out a code name? All right, cool. But, not that it's going to harm the console, but I would be surprised if it was called the NX. So things have floated about around the internet, calling it the Nintendo, as if like a nice reboot of the franchise. It's like, this is Nintendo as it is now, this new revolutionary thing. Well, I thought about it recently, Russ, and this is not a good name, but it's the only thing I could come up with earlier. It is the Ultra Nintendo.
Ooh.
Now, natural evolution from Nintendo Entertainment System, Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Then we got into the weeds, N64, GameCube, Wii, Wii U. Clearly a bad idea to call something a Wii U. Was clear at the time. Don't know why it happened, but okay. And now we are at the NX. And I believe it should be called, at this moment in time, and I'm probably going to change my mind as soon as we come off the podcast, the Ultra Nintendo. The next step in their mainline consoles that were incredibly successful. I know the Wii was successful, but that was a whole other thing. That screams the new Nintendo, in my opinion. Okay. The Ultra Nintendo would, if you market that in the way that says, look, we had the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo, and now the Ultra Nintendo. It's like, okay, now I will admit it doesn't roll off the tongue quite as easily as a Super Nintendo does. But then I imagine when that will come in, why are you calling it a Super Nintendo? What? Like super? It's a weird word until you actually assign it to the thing that it is. So, in my opinion, Ultra Nintendo could be a thing for the NX.
Nice.
What do you think, Russ?
I was very into the whole Nintendo NX thing, and then when Nintendo stopped seeming to be bothered about it, so did I. I thought it was just going to be a kind of a mini, I don't know, initials. I thought it was like Nintendo Extreme, what it was going to be. That was the name that it is in my head. Oh, yeah, NX, Nintendo Extreme. So I wonder if the kind of mid-level upgrade of both the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One may affect the NX kind of production, because obviously the longer they leave it, the more the hardware moves on, the more they've got to move on. So are they going to be targeting 4K with it? I don't know. But yeah, I like the Ultra Nintendo. It is a nice evolution stage. But I'm going to stick to, in my head, it is the Nintendo Extreme.
As the least extreme company of them all, I would have to.
It's got the ironic level to it. Is that like?
That's the thing. Yeah, it's not the most family-friendly approach ever. It's like,
extreme turtle squashing.
We are extreme. The Nintendo Extreme. So unless it's Xtreme and they're trying to link it in with streaming, jeez,
Ooh,
like it's got a built-in
ooh.
XSplit license to it. It's
Yeah,
it's all over.
no,
But this
streaming,
is
yeah.
just rampant speculation. And at this point, maybe you've stopped listening. I mean, if you've listened to the rest of our nonsense, surely you're here at the end. Surely you've stayed the ride with us. But that's pretty much all I've personally got, Ross. If you've got
Yeah,
anything to finish it off with.
I think no, I think we've had a very good week's discussion there, and the gaming just keeps hotting up, guys. So I mean, get yourself onto mygameslounge.com. Come and see all the different stuff that we're doing. We are looking to develop a few things at the moment, so we've got a few projects going on, but the main focus has got to be in October and November, games. There are tons of them, so make sure that you get on. There'll be impressions on a fair few games coming up. There'll be Mafia 3 impressions, there'll be Call of Duty Modern Warfare remastered impressions. There will be reviews. We've got Gears of War. We'll be going up with some kind of early doors impressions from Neil, who's been playing Gears of War 4, and there'll be the review of that and all kinds of things coming out next week as well. So there's plenty to enjoy. I've done a very, very monstrous post on remastered games that'll be going out soon as well. I'll probably put that out over the weekend. There are tons of quality remasters, and some out there that might, regardless of how you feel about remasters, because there's a lot of hate for remastered games, but regardless of what you might feel of them, they could actually end up being some of the best games that release in the next 2 months, especially when you consider Skyrim is coming out. That is going to compete with the big boys as far as things go. And also I'm going to be focusing this week on Tomb Raider, because for me, I'm going to say this now, drop the bomb, but Lara is returning home. She's coming back to the PlayStation brand after a year, but my question is going to be, is it a bit late a year on after? Is she still going to get the attention that the lovely Lara Croft deserves on the PlayStation 4, given that it released last year on the Xbox One? Anything that you've got coming up this week, Dave?
At the moment, we just published the Origami review, so I reviewed that. It was an interesting stealth game that I had a bit of trouble with at the beginning due to some a game, preventing progress bug kind of thing. So that was a thing, I believe, on the day of release, pre-release just. And let's see, because you're covering Mafia. I'm back on Warcraft playing Legion.
Whoa.
So that's kind of what's absorbing my entire existence right now. But
XCOM,
honestly,
sir. XCOM.
Oh, of course, XCOM. Yeah, it's sat there. Which apparently, according to some of our readers, is Game of the Year.
It just
no
is.
question.
No
it
question.
just is. There's no debate. So I'll be getting knee deep in XCOM. Actually, that's a really good point. When I'm not the other knee deep in WoW. So
Wow.
that'll be it, man. I'm back on WoW. It's good times. The revolution is occurring. The NX is here, and it's WoW. So that's my situation, I imagine. But I do believe on Tuesday we have WWE 2K17.
Yep.
Coming, if I'm not mistaken, which I believe is Neil. Neil's supposed to be doing some coverage for that.
Neil or yourself, sir. I mean, to be honest, WWE 2K17.
Oh, I have zero expectation.
Yeah, it's still. I didn't realize it was coming out on the previous generation consoles as well. So.
Oh, that's wow! I did not know that until you literally just said that. That is
worrying.
Okay, and again.
It could
to
be good.
Clear, we aren't professionals, so we don't need to know.
No,
no.
But,
yes, it could be. It could be good. But hearing from people that I listen to, especially like Giant Bomb's Dan Reichert, who's a very big wrestling fan, has played what he's played, and it doesn't sound fantastic. It sounds very much like more of what last year was, and last year was not good. But what can you do about it, Ross? Sometimes that's just how it goes. Is there anything else out next week that we need to really recall? Dragon Quest Builders is next Friday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Dragon Quest 2 Rise of the Tomb Raider comes out. And then we're kind of on the roll up to VR, and Battlefield 1 is the next major release. So we'll probably be talking about that next week, guys. So yeah, as far as this week's goes, thank you for listening to our podcast. You can catch more of Game and Respawn on our YouTube channel. Everything's just My Games Lounge, so hook us up on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, all the major sites. We're kind of there. say hello to us, come on to mygameslounge.com and see our coverage. But yeah, goodbye from me. David, yourself?
And of course, goodbye from me. I'm at SpitfireDG on Twitter, should you want to engage with me personally. And Russ will have his actual Twitter up at some point. I'm putting the statement on the podcast right now. So just, I do believe you will get that Twitter up and running. It won't be too difficult, and you'll thrive on there, my friend.
I will thrive with my love of the PC gamers and my fifth mouse button.
They will swarm, flock to you even.
Flock. They go, what are you console boy? Right. But no, thank you for listening to our podcast, guys. We shall speak again next week. We'll be talking all the games about next week, anything that's coming up in the news. Get us on mygameslounge.com. See you later, guys.